Hey there guys, in this video we're talking about our Ultimate Callout Challenge 2021. Going to kind of go over what happened in the events leading up to the event, and yeah, here we are. It's been a couple weeks, been trying to recover from my big blow up emotionally, metaphysically. I don't even know if what that word means, but I have been kind of dreading talking about it just because, you know, you blow up an engine and something catastrophic, you just got to kind of recover for a minute. I haven't even unloaded my truck yet, to be honest with you. It's still in the truck. So anyway, I do feel better about things. We have big plans going forward. We'll talk about those in another video, but we're going to do some really cool stuff with this going forward.
All right, so let me start from the top. Fall 2020, get a call from Zach Hamilton. He said, Will, I have a brand new solid warhead. Should fix some of these cracking issues you've been having with these wet warheads that you guys are filling with grout or block filler. And he said, I've got a CNC porting machine and a head flow bench. And he said, this head flows a lot. The one downside, it requires a 2.150-inch intake valve. Now, a lot of you guys don't know, but in the past we've ran a 1.97-inch intake valve. This big 2.150-inch intake valve fits great on Zach's test engine, which is a 4.4-inch bore size. We run a 4.250-inch bore size.
Nerd. That is why you're not on the team.
Just trying to be helpful.
I'll help. Elven Dragon Slayer, 10-point power sword.
That's it.
So that big a valve's not going to fit. So I mock up an engine. I figure out I can fit a two 120-inch valve. And there's enough meat on the seats of what Zach left there that I can make that work. So I call up the good folks at Victory. Coronavirus is still raging pretty hard. They weren't super slammed. They got me a set of valves right away.
So we'll put the head together. We got the heads from Hamilton. We had to work them over a lot to make them work with our valves because the valves were too big to fit in our bore, honestly. We had to shrink the valve size down. So we ended up milling the head to shrink the bowl where it comes out. And Will did a ton of work. He spent a ton of time on the bench. And it really hurt us because we had the short block built and we're just waiting for a head, waiting for a head, waiting for a head. And he just kept working it, working the flow bench. And we kind of started getting down to the wire. We had to say, all right, Will, just give us a head that works. And in the end, he gave us the highest flying head we've ever had on this truck.
Put the heads together. It's about, I don't know, a week before Ultimate Callout Challenge 2021. We strapped Todd's truck on the dyno and bam, we smacked 2,700 horsepower.
Holy, that's like the most we've ever done on our personal dyno. And I was really excited about that. I was like, golly, and the data logger showed we did about 180 PSI, which we've been way higher than that with boost and much lower power numbers. So I was pretty stoked about that, having the boost come way down, which means our head flow is awesome. And we're making a lot of power. So we did a couple little tweaks and did another one run. I think it was one more run. And then we hit like 24. It was quite a bit lower. I was like, oh man. And after the run was over, it was running rough. Had a really rough idle. It just wasn't right. And so we suspected a broken injector. We've had broken injector needles in the past, and so we thought we must have busted a needle in one of our injectors. So we quickly pull those out, pull them all down, and find out injectors are great, nothing wrong there. So then we run the overhead, and we found that we lost all of our lash and a couple of the intake valves.
We have no intake lash. All the intake valves have zero lash. I'm like, what the heck? So we open up the intake lash and we put the injectors back in, do a couple mild runs, 2,300 horsepower. No problem. The lash tightens up a couple thousand. So I'm like, it's just the seats moving a little, no big deal. Crank it up all the way, do a max power run, make 2,700 horsepower, and instantly we lose all the lash again.
What's happening is literally the pressure in the cylinder is pushing that intake valve up. And so it's tulipping it. It's not from heat, it's literally from pressure. So we we just need to get a couple runs in. So we take a whole bunch of extra valves, we take a whole other head that's already assembled, and it's time to go to UCC. All right, guys, we are now here in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Raceway. We made it to the pits. It's about midnight local time here. Later than I wanted to be here, but earlier than I've been here in the past, so that's good. So the day one of UCC is drag racing. And I was excited for drag racing. I mean, I'm at a huge, I don't have the luck of tracks nearby. I cannot test. Josh was able to do one test before he went, and good for him, he's ahead of the schedule. And he got a test and tune done at a track 5 hours away. Closest decent track is Las Vegas, it's 3.5 hours away, rarely open, like not very many test and tunes this time of the year, it's hot. And well, even in May, the truck wasn't ready anyway. But I didn't have a chance to test and tune, which is typical before UCC. Josh got one test and tune in, and he was very happy. He had good results, went real fast, it was awesome. So I have had run the truck decent recently, like last fall at a little airport drag strip, and it was still fun.
Todd got the win.
So I was excited to go run, and so the first pass of the day, it was a decent pass. I was pretty excited about it. It was going pretty well. Felt really good. I was accelerating really hard, and then all of a sudden it just stopped accelerating.
Too much power down Jack.
Day one, we're at the drag strip. We go ahead and get our radials bolted on, and we go up to the starting line. We went ahead and went with the same tune-up that we had left in Grand Junction, Colorado, testing a few weeks previous to that. So we go ahead, get to the line, get staged, get up on boost. I let off the foot brake, full throttle, smokes the tires on the 1-2 shift. I let out, we go down the drag strip. Not a big deal. Just blew the tires off. Driving through the pits, and all of a sudden the truck shuts off, and I'm like, this is interesting. So I try to crank it back up, it won't start, so we get the razor to tow us back to the pit. From there, we start diagnosing the crank no start. What we ended up finding was it wasn't meeting the minimum rail pressure requirement to actually fire the injectors. So we knew we had a bad injector, or not a bad injector, I guess, a stuck open injector would be a better term. So we go ahead and thanks to S&S Motorsports, we got a rail cap, figured out which injector was the issue, got it swapped out. Dynamite was nice enough to bring a bunch of spares for us. So we put that in. Everything's going good. We spool it up in the pit. Sounds fine. Take it to the drag strip for our second attempt. I start spooling the charger, starts fuel knocking really bad, so I'm like, great. Asked the starter guy if we could just back up. He says, sure. Pull it back to the pit, pull everything apart. I ended up swapping out the valve cover gasket, and the fuel knock went away, so we go back to the line for our third attempt, get it staged, leave a little bit softer, probably too soft actually. And we go through the 8th, and all of a sudden the truck, I let off the throttle, the truck's still accelerating. I'm like, great. Shut the key off, truck's still accelerating. And then I went ahead and grabbed overdrive. It snuffed the chargers enough to slow the engine back down. And I got pulled off to the side. I get out of the truck, and all I see is just oil dripping out of the catch can. I tried to start the truck. The starter just clicks. I'm like, great. So I call Meyer. Meyer gets the tow truck to come pick us up. And at this point, I'm quite frustrated. We ran a 6:55 at like 1:18, I think, is what our time was on like a 1.8 60 foot. So not our best 60 foot, obviously not the 8th mile we were hoping for. And now the truck has an issue.
We're thinking about doing another run, and I'm just like, Todd, I was like, we're gonna drop a valve, dude. I was like, we're keeping track, and I was like, at this point, we've added, I don't know, 50 thousandths lash on a couple of the valves. I'm like, you can't lose 50 thousandths of lash, meaning the valve is tulipped 50 thousandths without, being worried you're gonna drop the head off a valve. Head can go sideways, ruin the block, ruin the piston. So I was like, we better take it off. So we, in the pits, we scramble, we pull the cylinder head off. I pulled the cylinder head off the backup engine that I had carefully assembled, and torqued it. And we dropped that head on the main UCC engine.
We have all day.
In terms of the 330 and then as soon as this is done, I'll grab my computer and
I have the verdict spouts.
there's a wobbly head right there. That's that.
All right, so we swap the other head on, we get ready to go out and make a drag strip run, and on Todd's first pass, he left around 40 pounds, and it kind of jackrabbited a little bit. It looked like, to me, that he left a little too hard, and I was like, you need to leave a little softer. So he tries to launch it around 30 pounds of boost on the second run.
It felt really kind of weak until about third gear when it finally just came alive. Third gear hit, all of a sudden I'm in a rocket ship. And this is one of the fastest, definitely the most powerful ride I've experienced in this truck. And it was so hard to keep straight. Like literally it was going left really hard. And I'm like just trying to keep it in my lane, thinking if I go in another lane, I'm not gonna get a time probably. They never said anything about it, but it seems like you can't cross lanes and get a time. So I'm just pulling hard right, trying to keep her in my lane. And as you look back up track, you can see my my tire marks going down the track was like a big rainbow. So I definitely went more than an 1/8 mile, but I did keep it centered. And at the very end, towards the very end, all of a sudden I'm shooting white smoke and I've lost power.
Where's my power driven diesel fans? Raise your hands. Where's my mechanical, old school, real power out on the track right now? Yes, I said it, real power is on the track. Capable guy at heart right here.
Oh.
Do not like that. Do not like the start. I love mid-track and on.
So I slam on the brakes, get over the side, and we're thinking, is it trans fluid, is it oil, is it fuel, what it is? And we find that the injector hold down nut, there's a little ring on the injector that the nut holds down. That ring failed somehow, and the injector popped out of the hole and was just shooting raw fuel to the side of the engine. So that white smoke I saw was actually just raw fuel. So we got a one bent line, an injector we got to fix. That's not a big deal. So we get it back to the pits, and that one was my best run of the day. I got a 6.07 at 130 miles an hour, almost 131, not quite 131, which I was really excited about considering my terrible start and the fact that it still let off a little bit before the end of the race. So a good mile an hour, that's enough speed to be well below the time I'm at. My time was very terrible for that mile an hour, which when you have a truck that's not sorted out, your first half of the track sucks and you're just making it up on the back end with power. So that's what was going on. So we go back to the truck, the pits, we fix the injector, get it back in, we're like, we got time for one more pass. So we're talking with our friend John Sherrata, who races a lot. He's a very accomplished racer, his truck's awesome. Sorted out, and really, really nice race truck. And he's like, you gotta, with these tires, he has the same tires we run. He's like, you gotta leave hard, let them spin, and then they'll catch up, and then they'll go. It's not a radial, it's a bias ply, it's a drag slick. So you let them spin out the hole, and they'll catch and go. I'm like, all right, that sounds like a great idea.
We were reviewing all the footage that we had of Todd leaving. We're kind of showing John Sherrata, and he's kind of our resident 12-valve drag race expert, and he happens to be in the pit next door. And John looked at it, and he's like, it looks to me like you're sticking the tire even on the first one. He said, you need to leave harder and blow those tires off. And so we're like, huh. So John's like, you need to try leaving at 40 plus pounds of boost instead of this wimpy 30 or 25 or whatever you were. So in this final run, Todd goes out, might overshot the number a little, we don't know, proceeds to just rip it right off the starting line. And when it does that 1-2 shift, on the data log was at like 170 pounds of boost, and it destroyed all 4 tires. I mean, you want to talk about a display of power down track.
At that moment, it shifted to second gear, locked the converter, and rather than grab, it blew all four completely off. I got all sideways, 4 tires smoking down the track, and that's ended my run.
We ran a 6:55 at like 1:18, I think, is what our time was.
Invasion of Iraq.
Wrong.
That is absolutely
Wrong.
On like a 1.8 60 foot, so not our best 60 foot, obviously not the 8th mile we were hoping for. And now the truck has an issue. So I look at it, starter won't crank. I already am feeling a bottom end issue, and we have to make a decision. Huge thank you to David Petrick and Steve Burton from New Performance Auto. David came over and said if I was willing to swap the engine, they were willing to let me borrow David's spare. With the backup engine acquired, we set on this task of swapping a deck-plated 6.7 rail compound turbo setup to a stock block sleeved down to a 5.9 with a 5.9 crank with a single GT55 without a deck plate.
Nobody knows much more about technology, this type of technology, certainly, than I do.
So we had to start getting parts. Tessa met some guy that I reached out to on Instagram to get a 5.9 horn for us. Trevor Peterson from Curb Motorsports was next to us in the pit. He was kind enough to let us borrow his old 5.9 rail. And then we started taking this engine apart. We got the head off, and it did not look good. We had a couple of melted pistons, number 6 being the worst. It actually went through the piston, through the rings, into the rod end. And when we were barring the engine over, the sleeve actually was stuck to the piston to the point where it started to drive that sleeve up. So that was really fun. Not exactly what I wanted to see when I pulled it apart. We ended up checking out all the injectors. The reason why the number 6 had stuck originally was it had piston in it. So it had already started coming apart on us, and we just did not know it at the time. It's nobody's fault. Drew built a killer engine. James was awesome on the tuning. DDP's been awesome on the fueling. At the end of the day, it's called racing at this level, and I'm not disappointed. I'd be a lot more mad if we had skipped testing or cut corners, but we really gave it our all, and I was really proud of the team even at that point. So we had to get some of the parts out. We ended up standing it up on a fluid damper and beating that rod out so I could get the flex plate and the adapter plate off that engine that I needed to put on that 5.9 engine. And we started stabbing it. I think we started working on this engine at 3 p.m. By about 2 in the morning, we had it fully installed.
It's dyno day, day 2 in the morning. And as the guys are putting the head together, I'm just about to go to bed. I'm tired. And they go, hey, Will, do you have any shorter push rods or longer push rods? Longer push rods. I'm like, longer push rods? What in the heck? Like, come show me what's going on. Well, we come to find out we had eaten the lifter on the number 1 cylinder.
We just think it ruined the lifter. Either the lifter's gone or the cam is gone. The cam is an S7 tool still, so I'm going to lean towards the lifter being gone. So I think I've ruined a lifter that's grounded away with all this pressure, and so it's no good. So obviously, we can't just put a head on this engine and expect it to do good in the dyno. So we decide to swap engines.
Down the hard rocky water, you guys got to barely bump it.
Talking about.
Because then this will still spray up. I just need to bring it over.
Hey, there's no reason to leave when you're young. I just go on. That's a good ball right there.
pump on, right?
I get a call at 3 o'clock and Todd's like, hey, we're up on the dyno in about an hour. We had the backup engine in. We got it. You know, we're just about to do first fire up. Come in and help a little bit. So I rush back in. We have the backup engine, which is good parts, good solid block, good rods, good Wagler rods, good diamond pistons, same head. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the backup engine other than it's had more heat cycles. It's older. It's had more runs, and we haven't tested it at 2,700 horsepower on our dyno. We've really only tested it maybe to 2,400 horse, 2,300. It's about all we've made, but you know, it's a solid block. It's the same material. Other than block-to-block differences, it really should be just as strong. Doesn't quite have as good of a girdle setup, but we weren't having any bearing problems with that girdle setup, with the Kenny's girdle. And I didn't have billet main caps, but I'm like, we haven't broken a main cap and we haven't had bearing problems, so you know, for all intents and purposes, it should be fine.
So we quickly start the engine, we get it all in, get it started, check over everything, get the hot retorque. They're like, Todd, watch the lanes, Todd, watch the lanes. Like, we gotta go, guys. So everything's done, button it up, and we're off.
So we get on the dyno, we get it calibrated. I went pretty late in the day. I think I was 16th out of 19th. So it was like 2 or 3 p.m. I am pretty exhausted. I dumped 2 bottles of water down my fire suit to kind of cool me off. It was pretty hot at UCC this year. And we get it all strapped down. We go through the window and I can't get it to pull through the load at 20%. So I'm like, all right, Cody, back the load down. We try doing that, wouldn't do it. And all of a sudden it starts leaking fuel. And I'm like, oh no, what happened? What broke? So I pop the hood. We have 15 minutes on the dyno. We're at minute 4, and one of the fittings on the rail was leaking. Meyer runs over to the pit with a pit bike, grabs the fitting we need. We get this thing all put back together with 2 minutes to spare. At this time, the engine's hot, I'm tired. The truck's just, it's a disaster right now. There's oil, fuel, everything has just leaked on this truck at this point. And we start running through the window. I couldn't get it to build boost, Finally, I just told Cody, I was like, just turn the load on. And I hit all 4 kits of nitrous and it got the RPM to go up about 200 RPM. And that was it. We made 250 something horsepower, 500 and something foot-pounds of torque. The truck factory made more power than that, but we had a number on the board. Turns out the intake shelf that was bolted to the head, the bolts had rattled out. I'm not sure if I had forgot Loctite or if I didn't even tighten them. I don't know. At that point, I was pretty tired, but we had points on the board. So yeah, I mean, it's a horrible situation. We made 200 horsepower on whatever nitrous could go between the horn, the 1-inch space of air, and the intake shelf that the engine could actually like suck in. Not how I wanted the day to go, but again, it was points on the board and we were not going to quit.
We get on the dyno. We got a hot retorque done 5 minutes before. Anyway, get on the dyno, strap it down. Todd gets going through the run, and you guys have seen the video. Right as he gets to about 4,200 RPM, that engine lets go.
I spool up. It's going beautiful, hit 4th gear, and at that point I mash it. Now the turbos are just really singing and it's coming along great. And in this dyno, I thought, you know, we're gonna hit a little bit of nitrous just to see if we can't crack that 3,000. We're at 2,700 in Cedar City. If we just get a little bit more, you know, we may hit that number, that elusive 3,000 horsepower on a chassis dyno, which has not been done, and it'll be cool. So I hit the nitrous button, and shortly thereafter, the whole thing blew up.
It's a little warm there, bud.
Ended the event. We were shooting for 3,000 horsepower. We thought we could get there. We knew we had about 2,700 in the bag. We thought, man, if we spray the nitrous later in the run, not trying to make a big torque number that's dangerous, we figured we could maybe pick up that extra 300 horsepower if we're running out of turbo. Yeah, it didn't work.
You see me in the video before I flipped my visor down like for my face. Like when I went in there, I was debating I was pretty confident in this engine combination because like I say, we'd done so much here at Cedar City. I'm like, it'll be fine. Like I thought, I'm not going to wear my gloves. When I drag race, I'm wearing fire gloves. You know, I thought I'll just put my suit on and I'm not going to worry about gloves. Leave my face shield up because I'm not concerned about everything. So, but when the fire comes, you're like, click.
Anyway, that ended the event. We blew up and there was so much carnage with bent injection lines. The pump was broke. It just wasn't worth it to try to cobble the truck together to do a sled pull, knowing we'd only had a 13 millimeter pump, so we'd be down on power, knowing that we'd have no data logger, so it'd be kind of dangerous because we couldn't monitor anything, knowing all the emergency air shutoffs were all destroyed, all the piping was destroyed. We'd have to probably put a single turbo on there just to cobble something together. It just wasn't worth it at that point to go out there and, you know, if we're going to do the sled pull, we want to go with what we think can win. We don't want to go out there with some cobbled together thing that could pop or blow up a turbo. And so we threw in the towel. Some guys call us quitters. I don't know, the truck was pretty messed up at that point.
So we went ahead and transformed the truck to sled pull fashion. We obviously replaced the intake horn bolts, fixed that problem, and then we bolted on the duals on the back, the tires on the front, got the suspension locked out in the rear, got the front end clamped down, got the weight box thrown on with all the weight that we thought we were gonna need, and headed to tech. Got through tech, I think we were the second truck to make it through, and we're still making tuning adjustments to try and get this turbo to light. Finally, we get one that we think will probably work, and we're like, awesome. It ended up doing like a little dually burnout in the center area. If you guys got to the sled pull early, you probably saw it. And we drawed our chip. I think we pulled second to last. So it was awesome. I got to watch pretty much everybody's sled pull, and I went right behind David Petrick. Which, again, that guy is awesome, good friend of mine, and I'm really glad to have him around. He always picks me up when I'm feeling a little bit down. So we get hooked to the sled. I can't get this thing to light. I was like, all right, let me try seeing if I could just roll out and get it to light. I get to about the 50-foot mark. I realize this is not going to work. I let out, and per the UCC rules, if you let out before the 75-foot mark, you can tow you back and do a reset. So at this point, they've pulled me back. The oil temp's hot, the coolant temp's hot, the tranny's hot. I start to get it to light a little bit, and it pushes through the brakes. Again, we're in four-wheel drive low, and I proceed to go down the track at about 2 pounds of boost with 2 nitrous kits, and I'm just alternating them, trying to see if I can get this thing to cough to life. It did not. We ended up going like 175 feet, with the last 50 feet being quite the fireball show as the nitrous was backfiring, and yeah.
So that was a DNJ precision machine, deck plate 6.7. It had a GT55 and a HX82 from Lenny Reed at DEP. And it just happened. Got a little hot on the drag strip, melted pistons. We thought we were done. Then we have good friends like David Petrick. He's like, hey, I got a spare. So we worked all night. I can't thank my crew enough. Shad, Meyer, all of them. Got it put in. Fired at 7 o'clock in the morning Saturday. Went to go dyno it. 94mm Derrick on the 2600 stalls, just not gonna cut it. And the intake manifold bolts came off the shelf. And then today we did the best we could, but it just didn't have enough for a 94.
Yeah, running the big charger, using the nitrous all you could to help her go, but just you're not on the starting line of the track though, so hey, that's kind of a win.
All I wanted to do.
Yeah, finished all 3 events. He did it. He's got other people's parts all over the truck. Let's give him a big round of applause.
We're looking forward to some new engines. Drew took it home with him at UCC, so luckily we were able to get that sent off to get that fixed. He said it wasn't a huge deal. It's just going to be some sleeves and pistons, so we'll await that return. And then we were able to pull David Petrick's engine out on Sunday after the sled pull and send that back with him so Steve could fix that one. Obviously this is being filmed a lot later. We talked to Steve. It ended up being quite a bit of damage to the piston rings. So I don't know if we could have done anything better on that sled pull. I think the dyno running it that hot for that long kind of did the work for us. So again, I just want to thank my team. I want to thank the bosses for letting me have that opportunity to go, and every single company. We have obviously Power Driven, Dynamite Diesel, Wagler Competition. We have D&J, Hot Shot Secret. We have DPC, Fluid Dampener, brought over a brand new fluid damper after they saw us using it as a turntable, so huge thank you to those guys. We have Armor Inc., we have James Vanist. All these companies make it what it is. Industrial Injection, Tyler Kipp got us some parts that we needed, stuff like that. And it takes a village to compete at this level. And all I have to say is that Meyer, the tranny you built for UCC that was supposed to last the whole weekend, it did. Thank you, buddy. And to everybody else, thanks for watching.
That kind of recaps my UCC, guys. It was a crazy weekend as always. A lot of work, a lot of hours. Glad it's over. And yeah, I don't know my future plans UCC. I know Josh is going back. I don't know if we'll have a truck or not. You know, like I say, my truck I don't think is good, smart to take fast at this point. So we'll have to figure something else out. But we do have big plans. We're definitely gonna be competing in something somewhere, and you'll see us. We want to make it very available for people to come watch us. And again, thank you for everybody who came out, the people who came over to our pits and said hi and met us and shook our hands. It's always nice to see people. Get to know these people who comment on these videos. So it was a great outing still. It's always fun to see people. And yeah, so that's UCC 2021. We came home with broken parts, and I always tell people, one of the best things can ever happen to you is a blow up of some sort. You blow up a turbo, blow up an engine, maybe not as catastrophically as I do, but when something like that happens, it just is the excuse you need to build it back better. To build it back, I guess that's kind of a slogan, how you hear it a lot nowadays, to build something better.
Come on, man.
Do what you've been dreaming about in your mind, but you haven't done because your truck works. Now that my truck doesn't work, it's time to let some of these dreams I've been thinking about the past couple of years come to fruition and go forward in my own personal goals with diesel motorsports. And so I got big plans, and we're going to build an awesome machine, and I'm excited to show it to you when it's ready. And anyway, that's my story for UCC 2021, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.